Hello, this is GC Yoshi 13 speaking. I'm going to talk about Bedman's walking and crawling movement options. You may be skeptical if this deserves its own video. Honestly, it probably doesn't. But movement has its subtleties, and for the sake of comprehension I want to touch upon that, but after I cover the basics. Let's begin. Part 1. Bedman's walk. Walking in Guilty Gear follows one universal rule. The speed at which a character starts to walk is the fastest he or she will go for the duration of that walk. It doesn't mean much for most characters because walking is generally a slow and inefficient way to travel, but Bedman is an exception. Bedman has the fastest walk speed in the game, both forward and backward. To put into perspective of how fast Bedman's walk speed is compared to the rest of the cast, Leo Whitefang in Brynhildr stance holds the title for the second fastest walk speed in the game, and Bedman is still more than 1.5 times faster than him. If you're wondering why the two fastest walking characters is a guy on the bed and a guy who's walking while facing the opposite direction, the common sense answer is because everyone else hasn't started running yet. So yes, walking is Bedman's most reliable method of traveling on the ground. Use his fast forward and backward walk to quickly adjust your position as you see fit. Also remember that walking forward generates tension. Tension is the name of the meter resource in this game that is used for Roman cancels and supers. Part 2. Implications of Bedman's walk. Having a fast walk speed has a lot of subtle implications that might be easy to take for granted. First and foremost, Bedman's walk manages to be fast while carrying no weaknesses of a dash. Dashes in Guilty Gear have acceleration before the character reaches peak speed, but Bedman's walk already reaches peak speed the moment you walk forward. This means he can cover more distance up close before the opponent can properly react. This is why Bedman's walk-up throw is actually a very strong tool in his bag of tricks. Also speaking of throws, because Bedman is walking and not dashing, performing a walk-up throw is not only effective, but it's easy as well. Simply walk up and press the heavy slash button while holding forward. Dashing characters cannot throw while dashing, so they have to circumvent this by cancelling their dash with faultless defense, or wait for their dash to recover. In the grand scheme of things, this isn't a big deal. But it's nice to know that Bedman players get the luxury of simplicity, while other characters have to jump through one more hurdle just to do the same thing he can do. But remember, despite Bedman's walk speed being the best, it will not outspeed any character's dash. I also haven't talked much about his backwards walk. There's not much to talk about other than it's good for retreating. Remember, if you walk backwards too much, you may receive a warning for being a pussy and the game will take away your meter. This is called negative penalty and is a Guilty Gear mechanic to discourage passivity. Actually, don't bother to remember that. It practically never happens because you have to retreat for an eternity to even get the warning. It's also worth noting that Bedman's walk animation lowers his hitbox. He's actually lower to the ground while walking than he would be crouching. You can use his walk to move under certain attacks and punish your opponent, which is occasionally useful. Part 3. Bedman's crawl. Not a lot of characters in this game have crawls, and it's honestly not a big deal, but Bedman has one. To crawl, hold down forward to crawl forward, and hold down back to crawl backward. Bedman's crawling animation is exactly the same as his walking animation. It's worth noting, however, that Bedman's forward crawl builds tension at a nearly identical rate as his forward walk. If you find moments in a fight where there's not much activity going on, inching forward with his crawl is a good way to generate tension without putting yourself in a compromising position. Conclusion. You will learn very soon enough that Bedman is a character with many strong air options, and thus you will be tempted to play most of your game in the sky. That's not a bad thing necessarily, but never forget your ground game. Bedman is a very capable fighter on the ground, and the solid basic ground movement options should indicate that. As my great-grandfather once told me, never take the ground game for granted, for it is where we began, and where we will end. I am also a liar. This is the end of the video. Next video will cover his unique forward dash.